and welcome to your Yin Yoga. Today we're going to be doing kind of a hybrid class where we're going to use some Yin postures, but also a little bit of MFR for release through the hips and through the low back. So you are going to need 2 MFR balls, and if you don't have those, tennis balls or lacrosse balls work great. But then also your normal Yin props. So some blankets, some blocks, a bolster or a really firm pillow. If you don't have one of those, a couch cushion can work really good as an alternative. And so whenever you're ready, we're going to go ahead and begin. We're going to actually start in a Yin posture to open up the hips. So it's a variation of lizard in a yang practice. So more for the front of the hips to open up those hip flexors and the iliopsoas. So I like to use my blocks to support me. And then for the leg that stays behind, especially if your floor is a hard surface, it might be nice to have a blanket for some cushioning underneath that knee. So maybe grab one blanket and your 2 yoga blocks. And we're going to allow the blocks to frame the foot. So as you start to come in, go ahead and set your blanket onto one side of your yoga mat. And that's going to be the leg that stays behind. So that's going to be the knee that stays on the floor. And then the other knee is going to come forward. Now, the orientation of the blocks is really whatever feels best for you. So if the hips are really tight, it might be nice to have them on a higher setting. And if the hips are a little bit more flexible or open, it might be nice to orient the blocks on a lower setting. But allow the blocks to be underneath the shoulders. And then we're slowly going to just start to sink into the hips. Now, rather than pressing the hands into the blocks and kind of shrugging into the shoulders, just think of the blocks as an extension of your hands. So you're really just resting the hands on the floor, holding the upper body, rather than pressing the floor away and being active. Find as little muscular engagement as you can and let this be as passive as possible. So you should feel a gentle release in this back leg, front of the hip, that iliopsoas region. And notice too, if the knee comes past the toes, that's okay. But what we do want to focus on is making sure the heel is staying grounded on the floor. Maybe letting the chin fall to the chest to release the neck. And start to just tap into your breathing. And take a couple more breaths here. And then slowly use your arms to support you as you start to shift back out of that. Releasing that front leg. And maybe taking a moment to have a seat just to allow the hips to kind of realign. Maybe moving in whatever way the body feels like it needs to move to allow that to come back through your neutral. And then we'll do the other side. So go ahead and set your blanket off to the other edge of your mat. And we're going to place the opposite foot now in between those blocks. And then again, just allow the weight to start to shift forward. And again, rather than pushing ourselves up and out of this, can you allow the hands just to be kind of resting gently on the blocks? Maybe allowing the chin to melt towards the chest. And then come back to just focusing on your breath. Notice how it feels in the hips. If you feel like you're kind of collapsing in the shoulders and there's tension in the neck, see if you can't soften through the shoulder heads. And really allow this release to be in the back leg, front of the hip. And take one more breath here. And then again, slowly start to shift the weight back, releasing that leg, and however you need to adjust. So we're going to find a little MFR release for that same area. So your ASIS or your anterior superior spine, iliac spine. So if you're to feel around on your hips, and it might help to kneel upright, but if you feel around, you can feel these bony protrusions right in front of the hips. We're going to place the balls right inside of that. So for this one, I like to start on my belly and then just kind of pike the hips up. Again, feel for those bony protrusions in the front and then place the balls just inside of that. And then allow your body to just kind of compress around the balls. And the arms can be like out in a cactus shape where you can stack the hands to make more like a pillow for the forehead. And especially if the hips are tight, this might be a little intense in the beginning. But bring your focus back to your breathing. And notice the sensations that are there in the body. And maybe you can even identify that shift from what was difficult or had discomfort to where maybe it starts to even feel good. Notice if you're engaged through the glutes or the legs, can you let that soften? And can you really allow the body to just be as passive as possible? Allowing gravity to apply the pressure. And now if you need a little bit more, maybe you're not getting a whole lot of sensation, feel free to work your way up onto the forearms, but try to keep the neck really soft and relaxed as you do so. And if you did come up on the elbows, just notice how that changes, how that maybe hits your body in a different way. And take one more breath here. And then if you were on the forearms, go ahead and lower yourself back down. Hike up your hips once more just to remove the block or the ball, and just lay onto the belly. And just notice how that feels in the front of the hips. You feel any different now than when you first arrived? And now we're going to target the back of the body in that same general vicinity. So however you want to come up and coming onto your back. Now we're going to target the psoas, or the posterior superior iliac spine. So it's kind of the same as the ISIS. I don't know why I'm struggling with that today. You feel around for those bony protrusions. Well, you have the bony protrusions in your backside as well. So if you feel around on that lower lumbar region of your back, you'll feel these two bony protrusions coming out. We're going to come right above those. So once you feel them, kind of these two big pieces of bone sticking out, we're going to come just about 1 inch above of that. And we're going to do this on our back. So transitioning onto your back. Now for this one, it can be nice to kind of just roll onto one side, find that psoas, place the ball right above it, and then roll onto the other side and do the same thing. And if you feel any like sharp pain, you might be on an actual bone. So feel free to make little micro adjustments until it feels like it's more in the soft tissue around the bone. And you can leave the knees bent if that feels comfortable. You can straighten the legs if that feels comfortable. But again, for today, we're just going to focus on the compression. So allowing the balls to kind of just push into the muscles and the fascia to instigate that release. And again, just come back to your breathing. Notice any sensations that are coming up in the body. And take one more breath here. And then you can either bridge the hips up to release, or again, roll onto one side, remove one ball, and then roll onto the other side. And once you're there, go ahead and lay all the way down flat onto your surface. And again, just notice how it feels. Notice if you can feel maybe even a warming or tingly sensation as new blood hydrates the fascia tissue. You feel a little bit of release in the low back. We're going to move now into the glute med. So really this side part of the body. So if you use a flat hand, so make sure you're not using like pointy fingers. But as you start to come down, you'll feel that little push out, where in women, you've got that big hip bone that kind of sticks out, the greater trochanter. So we want to be right above that. So if we were to place the balls, and I'm going to use two because the glute med can be a little sensitive, but if you want to play with one, you can see how that goes. But really, we're going to put it right above the greater trochanter where the glute med is on the side of the body. So they're right in the sides of those hips. And we're just going to lay down on top of the balls again. You might want a block or a blanket for the head. or maybe you can just use your arm to support you. But at first it might be really intense, as this is one of our deep hip stabilizers. So if it does feel a little bit of discomfort or intense, come back to focusing on the breath. See if you can't soften the rest of the body. We're just going to try to find a different spot in the same region. So all you're going to do is kind of, without moving the balls, roll a little bit back so the chest is a little bit more open, and just see how that changes it, how that feels. When we have an area of discomfort or even pain, sometimes we really need to affect the surrounding tissue. So hitting different parts can help release through that fascial chain to help the area that's uncomfortable or hurts to release. And then go ahead and slowly release those balls from underneath the glute med. And you can feel free just to roll over. I'm going to flip around so I don't have my back to you. We're just going to do the other side. So again, you're just looking for that, if you're to feel around for it, when you feel the bone kind of push out right here in the side of the leg, that greater trochanter. And in women, we can feel it pretty, where the hip sticks out, it might be a little bit more prominent. And again, just use a flat hand rather than fingertips. And we want to be right above that bone. And we're just on that side of the body, right in that glute med. Ooh, this side's a little bit more tender. We might have one side that feels it a little bit more than the other. But again, as much as you can, try to soften the rest of the body. And just allow the balls to compress into the muscle and into the fascia tissue, inspiring a release and hopefully a little bit more range of motion afterwards. And focus on the breath. And maybe even noticing that shift, if it started really hard or a lot of discomfort, see if you can't inspire a softness or more ease. And then all we're going to do without coming off the balls is roll back a little bit, and they should kind of roll underneath of you and just be hitting a different part, but we're still on the side of the glute. So we're not like in the meaty part, or if you could draw a bullseye, we're not right in the middle of the glute, but we're still really kind of on the side body. And just see how that changes, how that feels. And then from here, slowly start to lift up off of those. And now we are going to go right into the center of the glute, so the meaty part of the glute. So you could draw a bullseye on your tush right in the middle, right in that meaty part. So coming onto the back, you won't really want a block or a prop for this one. Maybe a blanket under the head, but probably not. So go ahead and press the feet, bridge the hips up, place the balls right in the center, one on each side of the glute, and then lower yourself onto them. And if we have like hip stiffness or soreness or pain, this might feel intense at first, but just allow the tissues to wrap themselves around the balls to start to feel that gentle release. Now, if this is enough, feel free to stay exactly as you are. If you need a little bit more, it might be nice to find the most gentle of windshield wipering of the leg. And nothing huge. We're not going like all the way side to side, but just a little bit of a side to side rocking just to start to massage the area. And if you were finding a gentle movement, go ahead and come back into stillness. And then from here, slowly lift your hips up and release. And one more time, just lay down flat and notice how the hips feel. If there's any difference between when you first arrived to now. And we're gonna come up on to our sitting bone. So however you wanna get there, if you wanna roll into one side to come up, or if you just wanna roll up, however feels good. We're going to come into a yin pose, more square. So depending on how tight the hips or even the knees are, you might want to have a block handy, and you might want to sit your sits bone or even the tailbone area just on the edge of a blanket to help you find a little bit more natural of a lift. But go ahead and bring one leg where the shin is somewhat parallel with the edge of your mat. We're going to stack the other leg on top. So ideally we have knee on ankle, ankle on knee. And if you have space between this top knee and the bottom ankle, again, if there's a lot of space, maybe you put a block there. There's just a little bit of space, maybe we place a blanket there. And for today, maybe all you do is stay seated upright and allow the chin to fall to the chest. And we should feel a little bit of a release, or maybe a lot of release if we're really tight, this top leg outside of the hip. If you're not feeling a whole lot of sensation here, the next thing would be to allow the forearms to rest on the leg. So adding a little bit more resistance outside of just gravity to see if we can't open up that hip a little bit more. And if you need even more than that, you might fold even more forward just to find a little bit more range of motion and still using the rest of your body to supply a little bit of more weight and resistance outside of just gravity. Just play around with the variation, see what feels good yet challenging for your hip, and then allow yourself to settle into stillness. Again, just bringing that focus to your breath, softening the neck and the shoulders, whether you folded or you're still sitting upright. And then slowly, if you were folding, start to work your way back to sitting upright. And take a moment. You had a prop between the knee and the ankle. Go ahead and slowly remove that. And then however you want to transition to the other side, if you need to take some movement in between the sides, some stretches, some movement, anything like that. And as you settle into the other side, if there's any asymmetry in the body, you might find that one side there's no space, where on the other side there was. So that just helps us to appreciate that sometimes there's some asymmetry in our hips. And that might be something we want to focus on in our therapeutic sessions. But if there is space, maybe there's symmetry and there's the same amount of space, again, you can always place a prop between the two. But then however you want to get into it again, you can sit upright with just releasing the neck. You can place the hands on the legs, giving yourself a little bit more resistance, or you can fold even deeper. And just notice how it feels. You don't want to sit in pain, but if there is a little discomfort and it's not too much, see if you can't invite in that stillness and focus on the breath. And really allow either gravity or gravity plus your body weight to open up this muscle and this fascia. And just scan the body, see if you're tensing anywhere that you can soften, or kind of muscling into the shape that you can just allow it to be really passive. Take another breath here. And if you had folded forward, slowly and gently work your way back up to sitting upright. Take a moment before we come out of the shape and just notice. And then whenever you're ready, slowly release. And again, take any movement you might need to allow that to release, maybe straightening the legs out to release the hips. I want to come into one more shape before we work our way onto our back. So think like a butterfly shape. So we're really going to want to release the outside of the hips, the low back, and even into the front hips and the groin. So if we're really tight in that area, again, we might want to sit our tailbone just kind of nestled on the edge of a blanket to give us some support. And we're going to bring the bottom of the feet together. Now I'll leave it up to you how deep you want to go. If you want, we can find more of a diamond shape where the knees and the ankle and the groin are coming together. or you can slide them in a little bit more deeply. Now, depending on your range of motion, you might want your bolster, or maybe you've got your blocks, something that you can kind of fold onto for relief. So something you can release the neck and the shoulders. And again, if the legs are really far in, maybe you place the blocks on the outside of the feet. Maybe we use our bolster even for this one. And this one can be nice, especially if you're doing the diamond shape. You kind of place one end of the bolster in the arches of the feet, like a little anchor, and then your forehead rests on the other end. And you can allow yourself just to kind of feel this support, this tactile grounding. So however you want to set yourself up, bolster or blocks. With the heels a little further away from the body, it'll be a little bit more passive and less active. So it's really what you want from it today and what feels good in your body. Just let your arms be soft, let your shoulders relax. And if you want to go a little deeper, feel free to, at this point in the pose, orient your props on a lower setting. And see if you can't round the back and find a little bit more release for the lumbar spine. But if you go a little deeper and that doesn't feel good, feel free to digress right back to where you were. Just as the fascia releases, sometimes we can go a little deeper. So just an invitation to see. And then slowly start to work yourself back up and start to dismantle whatever props you were using. And we're going to finish with some resonant breathing. So I'm going to play a sound from YouTube that helps us to breathe about 5 to 6 breaths per minute. More and more studies are showing that our nervous system is so connected to how we perceive pain. So if we're struggling with pain in the hips or in the low back, chronically or even acutely, a lot of the times allowing ourselves to tap into that parasympathetic nervous system can help release some of the pain communication sensors that are happening in the brain. So we're going to also get ourselves set up physically in a very comfortable way. So I will invite you to have at least a block or two, a bolster, and a blanket. The blanket specifically for a neck roll to the back of the mat. So you'll kind of want to unfold it, a couple times. You've got a good amount of fabric, and you're going to place the long edge at your shoulder region. Now, as far as the legs go, I like to have it right along my knees, kind of with a block underneath the bolster. I'm on a cork mat, so it might not work today. I might need to be on my sticky mat. Let me fold this up a little bit. I'll move it this way. So if you're on a sticky mat, it'll hold it. If you're on cork, it might slide. But the idea we're looking for here is the knees can feel really supported and the feet are kind of dangling off. So that might be a nice option, or you might just place the bolster underneath the knees, however feels supportive for you. So I'll walk you through the neck roll. So you'll hear a shift in the sound. Here we go. And then you'll hear it shift again. So we're gonna match our breath to that. So go ahead and get yourself set up for the lower body first. And when you come onto your blanket, just make sure that top ridge is right at the tops of your shoulders. So my legs are supported. Now for the neck roll, what we're gonna do here is just lift your head up, roll the blanket underneath of you until you have enough padding that your neck feels like it's in this natural plumb line with the rest of the body, rather than having that like curvature where it's lifted up. So this might be where you want to stay today. But if you want to really create a cocoon, go ahead and grab the outside edge and you're going to roll it underneath until it's framing the side of the head, and then do the same thing with the other one. So your neck is supported and the sides of the neck have this nice little cocoon, and you can really allow yourself to tap into your restfulness. Once you're settled into your shape with your props, start to listen into the sound and start to match your breath with the rhythm. So as you hear the next shift, take an inhale. And when you hear it shift, exhale. Inhale. And exhale. And just allow your breath to follow this resonant breathing. And let your breath kind of lull you into relaxation. Make sure you feel physically comfortable. To drift onto things outside of this moment. Come back, focus on the sound, on the breath. yourself up into a comfortable seated posture. And I hope you feel relaxed and connected to your body. I also hope your hips and your low back feel a little bit better. Thank you so much for joining me for your YIN and MFR release. Until next time.